Yeah,
Just
so
briefly
I guess I'll
introduce
get
you.
started. Okay. So it's 9:09. We were supposed to start an hour ago, but uh all jokes aside, this perhaps could be we call Africa time. So I'm extremely sorry for being late today. My name is Emmanuel Ashamu. I spent my early childhood in Nigeria. I lived there until I was 10, and then my family moved to Virginia. At some point along the line, I became a strength coach. In 2006, I began coaching in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. I coached at Georgetown University, Amherst College, Bowling Green State University, that was in Ohio. I've coached at University of Virginia in Virginia. Uh, Coached for a private group called Exos. I've worked for the military as a strength and conditioning coach for about 9 years. Most recently, I was at Vanderbilt University as the associate director for strength and conditioning for football. Let me go back. And currently, I'm the key account manager for a specialty equipment company called VA7. We do custom barbells, dumbbells, benches, etc. For teams like the Chiefs or the New York Knicks. Um, I'll tell you more about that transition as we, continue on. Just a little bit more about me and how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. Yeah, and just to share more with you. Over my time as a coach, I'd like to share some of like the foundational things that have been helpful for me uh, as a practitioner, uh, and those will be on the slides that are following. So we all know this story of the little engine that could. Um, and I think that it's perhaps an easy way to remind ourselves to be patient with the work that we're doing with our athletes. Oftentimes we, can succumb to the pressures from outside, um, the rush to push. But, as coaches and the people that are in charge of taking care of somebody, we need to remember to take time to listen, to hear their story. And yes, and I think this story also has a principle, this idea of threes. So quick synopsis: train is stuck on the tracks, all the kids' toys are on this train, but it's got to get to the other side. No train will help it. The big, powerful speed train, it's too powerful, it doesn't have time. Then there's another train that's really fast and it's moving too quick, it also doesn't have time. But this is a train that's moving methodically at a good tempo that is able to take the time to stop to help get all these kids' toys over that mountain to the other side. And so it's this idea of threes that I think is critical, and this idea of patience and consistent progress. I touched on this a bit, but the law of three. Um, if you think about this principle of productivity, it states, and this is ripped straight off of AI. What is it, Gemini? Okay, so a computer wrote this. All right, take it for what it's worth. Working with three items or tasks at once can improve productivity and decision making. So three items at once can improve productivity and decision making. I think that's an interesting way like uh, to think about these principles that we're going to discuss going forward. And it's really simple, um, and it's always been something that I went back to. The law of three is also a metaphysical principle that describes how elements work together to create change. It's based on the idea of affirming, denying, or reconciling an interweaving of these three forces to produce a fourth. Interesting ideas, I think about like a triangle, 3 points, or if you're playing uh any match, soccer, if you have two teammates, you stay in that formation, and there's always an option for the ball to move. The law of threes is powerful. And so we'll break our discussion or break this presentation up into these three segments: the start, middle, and finish. First, we'll have our considerations for linear speed. I don't know if I even really said that, stated that at the beginning. We're talking about linear speed, foundations of linear speed. Our second block, we'll talk about acceleration. We'll also break that into threes. We'll talk about your start, mechanics of acceleration, and then some applications. What are simple drills that we employ, or what would we look for as a coach? And then the other phase of linear speed would be absolute speed. What happens after the acceleration phase is done and our athletes are trying to maintain and hold their posture, mechanics, and speed and be efficient? Talk about the entry into absolute speed. What does that look like? The mechanics, and also some applications. So here are sort of three groups of foundational considerations you need to have when developing linear speed or any sort of speed for an athlete. I think these are just general tenets. So your block number one would be general preparation. This could be so many things. General preparation can be the ability for someone who is post-op, their ability to just get through a warm-up. That is general preparation. Or someone coming back from a traumatic injury, a surgery. Though that's where my mind usually goes for general preparation, but it's also coming back from an off season, um, sustaining a heart rate that is the athlete's ability just to sustain their heart rate for a period of time that would equate to whatever measures of fitness you deem are important for them to achieve, for them to practice their sport safely. General preparation. Range of motion. So, basic biomechanic integrity, movement, stability of joints, torso. I think that's where I usually go, is this notion of the pillar or torso, being able to resist rotation and forces, and being able to just buttress all the extremities going around it. And then basic strength. I've paraphrased and borrowed a lot of parts of my presentation from people who I admire. So like Donald Chu, Al Vermeil, and Charlie Francis. And so some of the ideas that I'm going to present are straight from these guys. So this idea of strength, Al Vermeil has a very simple, body weight, 3 sets of 10 lunges. Can an athlete do that? And this is, these are very elementary things, but important to know when you're at the foundation. And they're also, very simple to apply anywhere in any setting. So that's your first tenet when you're considering. These are the first 3 principles that you're going to be considering. Is my athlete ready to begin to sprint? Then when you're done with that, you're going to look for improving specific strengths. So how capable are they to deliver force into the ground and maintain posture? And you're going to start to move from, this general prep, just being able to make it through a warm up, to marching, skipping, pushing, things that are going to be helping to develop an athlete's ability to put force into the ground with a bit more intensity. And then the final phase of considerations that you would go through, sort of final block is, an emphasis on building explosive starts. So this is where you increase the intensity, increase the volume one way or the other those uh of those starts. Someone who's in this phase has demonstrated, you know, um, past, they're well past sort of rudimentary mechanics in terms of running. They should be um, have a very strong foundation to push on to this sort of bit more intensive uh, training. Um, you're still looking to improve mechanics. That never leaves. You're just improving them at a higher level, and perhaps integrating more, slightly more complex drills, and maybe um, you know a slightly more advanced skipping pattern, for example. And then you're looking to develop specific skills as well. So I think that's more of like the skill of the sport. That's where we go. So quick review: this is our foundation: general prep, range of motion, strength, basic strengths. Then our middle: improve specific strengths, move from general to specific preparation. And then emphasis on explosive power, improving mechanics, developing specific skills, the tactics of the sport, practicing the skills that they need. Some things as well here. This is when I think about areas that need the most care typically, uh, we're looking at hips and being able to have, one hip flexed and the other extended. And here's a really nice flow. This was written by Gene Staliker. We worked together at a special operation command many years ago. And she's a wonderful athletic trainer. And we just, you know, she decided to write these plans to help us with our warm-ups. But I just wanted to give an example of, some movements as well, and a flow that is efficient in a way that you can present it. And what we ended up, developing was, different levels of hip foundations or hip movements, and advanced them. And the nice thing about having these sort of foundations is that athletes learn them and they get more out of them when it's the, written down, and it's a foundation and we can progress it. So the hips. Here's another simple, I think, tool that you can use to evaluate your athletes to see how ready they are to, you know, deliver force, or to see if there are leaks. This is Albert Meal, and this is a drill that he talked about being really important to him, and I always found it like useful and thoughtful. And again, it doesn't really require much. You just need a wall. And if you can see, he's placed, he's in a push-up position. He's prone, um, and he's going to extend that right leg, and his left leg is also off the ground. So he's off the ground completely. And what he might do is, do a march, you know, exchange those legs, and then what you'll see, you'll get a good idea if someone's able to have good control of their hips, or if their glutes fire, that sort of thing. You can see how an athlete might leak energy. Oh, this is a good drill. So moving on from, from those considerations, let's get a bit more specific and talk about acceleration mechanics. Uh, this is a good stick figure demonstration of those first three strides. Starting down, and in that position, both hips are flexed. Or like the second frame, you can see how both hips are going through extension. Jumping out at the start is a cue that I always found useful. Um, and then also, carries over to the sorts of training that we'll talk about a little bit in the following slides in terms of applications. And then seeing, that split stance that is so critical. It's in that fourth frame, that split stance, that we train pretty hard with these sorts of movements. Right, for example, exercise number 2, right leg forward, lunge, hip pry, to press and open the hips, and then moves into exercise number 3, right leg forward with T-spine rotation. You're already in that position with the right leg forward, and now you're getting some thoracic rotation. That's also important. Thoracic rotation on stable hips. I think I can draw on these, right? Yeah. Oh, thanks for everyone's patience with my presentation. This is the first Zoom presentation I've ever done. And feel free, I think, is everyone's audio on? Please feel free to say anything, ask questions, uh, stop me. You can disagree. You can, yeah, contribute at any point. Please feel free. I'm pointing to this right here because this point seems to have, this is where there'd be a lot of force, and that's where being able to have a bit of a T-spine that's good with rotation would be very helpful, would be in this position there, especially. So let's see, talking about acceleration, and let's talk about the mechanics. How do we develop good acceleration mechanics? These are simple tenets: march, skip, and then I would, to stick with the rule of threes, I would say, march, skip, and then put it into practice, running posture as a way to, actually practice the movement. So and we can break it up into that as well. I like these ideas as well from Donald Chu about how to look at running. How do you evaluate? I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, yeah. How do you evaluate running? And this is always a good way to think about it. Look from the ground up: foot, ankle, knee, hip, pelvis, torso, arm action. Evaluate those things as you look at your runner or your athlete, and you're trying to improve their mechanics. The march, easily one of my favorite drills, easily the drill that we go to, often for athletes. I spent a lot of time coaching this drill over the last 20 years. Let's see if I can figure out how to get these slides to pause for me. Yeah. So key things about this wall drill are, we'll start with his posture. Let's start with the hands. This is where most folks don't think about, but I tell athletes to grab the wall, spread their fingers, grab the wall. What happens when they do that is this T-spine usually gets a little bit more set so that they're not, losing their run, losing their posture here. And then other key areas too, I emphasize this knee drive. And I also would coach this up a bit more. I would ask for this foot to be flexed. I would ask for them to, if keep that foot dorsiflexed. This I might coach this up a bit harder. This looks good. You can tell the glutes are firing, and you can tell because here's a simple one. If you see like wrinkles in people's clothes like this, you see those? Usually that means that muscles stuff is going on. I don't know where I heard that, but someone old told me that, and it's true. I mean, this is an example right there, So look for the folds in the clothes. Sometimes they'll tell you what's going on underneath, and you don't have to, risk getting sued in this era by, back in my day, folks used to punch the butt or, poke it to say, hey, your glutes fired. But I think times have changed and maybe, coaching less with your hands. There you go. That was a joke. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the applications of this march. This is an athlete that I was trained a few years ago, named Davion Davis. He is at this point he was had an ACL reconstruction. He's a few maybe gosh, I can't remember how many months out he was. But when you take a look at his march here, I thought this was a useful slide because you can see how his limit in knee extension, how that affects the rest of his chain, and how on his non-surgical side, you can see how movement is just a bit more fluid. So I thought this would be useful to, for us to see what it really looks like when these, when these drills are applied. They're not, you can find small details that can be improved. And it's not always, you're going to have athletes that are coming back from injury. And this is where you're going to want to start when you're getting them back to running. The wall march. So once we've gotten to a point where we're satisfied with our ability to do a wall march, we would take that march and we wouldn't go to a skip, obviously skipping ahead to the next slide, but we would, be able to accumulate some volume of just being able to march. Is it, 3 repetitions of 10 yards of marching? It could start at as low as that. And it could, build up to being, 10 sets of 10 yards of just marching as well. 10 sets of 10 meters. Let me give you that. But then we would progress to skips. When we were talking about developing explosive, improving the development of explosive starts, the thing we need to keep in mind is that we always want to have really good landing mechanics and be able to develop those first. But then, when we move into them, like learning how to apply them safely is obviously really important as well. So here are a couple, I don't know, what do we call these, like nuggets of wisdom. This one is from Derek Hansen. I've used Derek Hansen's work for probably 20 years. And I would highly recommend that if you're looking for more information, like he's a resource to go to, especially, for, I think especially strong for, hamstring rehab. He used a lot of his protocols really successfully. And, even with that athlete that I just showed you, Davion, I use a lot of Hansen's principles in his return to play. So anyway, I can gush about Derek Hansen, look him up. But this is a good thing to keep in mind as you're applying to your athletes. On all multiple linear jumps and hops, it's best on the last effort to jump or hop onto a box to reduce landing force, especially for athletes over, 220 pounds, 100 kilos, right? Or more. So yeah, that was one sort of nugget that I liked from Hansen. And then also I spoke about it a little bit earlier, but the ability for an athlete to be able to do 3 sets of 10 bodyweight squats and lunges at minimum before they did any sort of explosive work is, really critical. A little side note about bodyweight squats and lunges as well, or training with minimal equipment, would be to always remember the importance of tempo and the ability for tempo to make any movements more potent. So tempo, By that, I mean the emphasis on the eccentric portion of a movement. So, 3 sets of 10 of body weight squats and lunges, you know, it could be done really quickly, or it could be done, for minutes on minutes on minutes, and it could be pretty aggressive depending on the tempo that you require uh, your athlete to do it at. So, a split squat, for example, with a 5 count tempo is much different than a split squat on a one down and up, one down and up, one down and up versus down one, two, three, four, five, and then back up. So that is an aside. Um, Keep that in mind if you find yourself with limited resources, but needing to have a potent dose. Go to you remember you can use tempos. Here's a great photo of, take it back now, of a good landing. All right. Notice in this last slide, where's my little clicker thing? Notice the position of his hips, right? Hips are back, they're above his knees, all right? He's landing, he's absorbed the power from the jump, you know. Um, yeah, broad jumps. I mean, broad jumps are probably, my one of my favorite sort of plyos to apply for sprinting, and especially for acceleration starts. I like to tell athletes to jump out of their start, to get that good explosive push off of both legs. Um, but yeah, a caveat with broad jumps is, you need to be really careful when you apply these. You need to make sure that you never sacrifice the integrity of this land for the volume of jumps. It's gotta always be in this position, and you have to demand that. Don't accept anything less, or you're putting your athletes in harm's way unnecessarily. So I think the 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 most troubling thing is when we're trying to do something good for athletes, or the athletes themselves are trying to do something good for themselves, but it's detrimental. And so anything we do, anything we prescribe, if it's not done correctly, it's risky. So our emphasis is on consistent, not being the fastest, not being the biggest, but being the little engine that just does it cleanly and consistently. I think I can. 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 A tempo makes everything more intense. Let's take a second and let me explain a little bit more about this. So these are developmental football players at Vanderbilt University. Uh, this is a front squat. Yeah, and we have the room on a cadence to make sure that we are respecting sort of the integrity of the lift, and making sure that our athletes aren't racing through the reps, but that we're able to have a good control over the room and know exactly what the stimulus is that they're getting. Um, yeah, and that sort of tempo, that's a pretty good stimulus there, I think. Um, yeah. Any questions so far? Also, I thought a front squat was probably a good video to show. When we talk about strength movements that I think have a high carryover for acceleration and sprinting, certainly the front squat for me is probably uh, one of my favorite lifts. I think it just obviously challenges the torso and improves quad strength. Sort of the emphasis on quads is really important as well. Yeah, so a movement I think has a high payoff if you're trying to improve your athlete's acceleration or sustain it. Here is a good drill we did as well. So working on some single leg hops. So we're doing this on sand as a way to, let me pause this. So we're doing this on sand. It does a few things. One, it sort of displaces a little bit of impact, also challenges a little bit of stability at the ankles, so it's a sneaky way to add some intensity and then also reduce it. Um, yeah. So this was our workaround for being late in our summer development and needing to still train some intensities, but and work some specific strengths for our acceleration work. But then also take some of the impact off of the guys' bodies. I mean, they've been squatting, lifting, training pretty hard at this point. And you can sort of tell like their backs, like physiques are kind of like, yeah, we've been training pretty good here. Um, so yeah, just wanted to show this as an example of ways that you could work on some of those plyometrics. Uh, then finishing, here's more application as well. I'm sorry, not finishing. This is the more of your application for the starts. These are run rockets. So the athletes have a belt on. That belt, that belt is connected to pulleys on those systems in the back. My guy. And those we can change the load that they're pulling. Uh, so one note here is obviously like these athletes are pretty advanced. They're able to do those front squats on a tempo. We've done plyos. We've checked all those boxes before we got to this point of now trying to emphasize the explosiveness out of the start by using some resistance. Key things to keep in mind is that we aren't using so much resistance that their mechanics change. We're using just enough resistance to give them stimulus, but not so much resistance that it forces a bad mechanic. Let me see if I can get my other tool out here. I want to highlight this. This is also a good point right here. Is everyone seeing the zoom? Did this zoom in work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting here. This athlete right here is in the back with a kyphotic posture. The interesting thing about him is he is one of the best linebackers in the nation right now, but he's one of the worst movers. The absolute, I mean, you know, you think this looks good, right? These angles look good. This looks great, right? Love that. That looks good. This does not, okay? But the funny thing is that this guy is the actual, he is the king. The king on the football field. He's a gamer, you know, an absolute gamer. Pretty incredible athlete. Um, but anyway, I just wanted to have that note. Now, get me out of this. Oh, I promise I'll be better with with these gadgets next time. Hmm? Okay. Yeah, not too bad. Great arm action. Another good nugget. If it looks right, it flies right. Charlie Francis. And I think this is a good tenet to keep in mind when just when evaluating movement. That when we can look at things that are fluid, and you can kind of tell like if the movement isn't fluid, then something needs to change. So here's what where we would end up looking for this for these starts. So moving on from starts and acceleration, we're going to go into absolute speed, and you see this posture is much different. It's much more upright. Um, Stride length is it's obviously it's longer, and it'll keep growing. And then we see where foot strike is underneath the hips, directly underneath the hips. Here's another, this is borrowed from Al Vermeil as a way to show that continuum. So, well, like we've already addressed that 0 to 10, the initial acceleration and emphasis on explosive strength. And then as we transition and move into absolute speed, then we're looking to be a bit more elastic. Here's an application of uh, of absolute speed. These are our flying tens, a flying ten. So athlete begins in a jog, builds into a sprint, that dials back down. So totally they're covering 10, 20, 30 yards. So jogging the first 10, accelerating the next 10, and then dialing it down. And this is an easy way to work on your absolute speed mechanics. You can see this athlete back here. He's almost there. He's a bit forward, but this is transition. I think that he might pull it off. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, not bad. His knees are a bit forward, but I think that's not bad looking run to me. Yeah, pretty cool. So, there it is. Like, two ways to break up your linear acceleration mechanics, two different drills, working starts. Once you develop strong capacity in those starts, start adding resistance, start adding volume, intensity to those starts. Then, to work your other capacity, the absolute strength, give yourself an entry, a 10-yard start to build up your speed, and then move through it. I wanted to review this slide again because I found that this is a really good time to have that order of operations of how to evaluate running: foot, ankle, knee, hip, pelvis, torso, arm action. Let's do it. Foot, ankle, knee, hip, torso, arm action. This is also a gold nugget from Donald Chu. Keep that in mind always, evaluating running. Here's some work from Al Vermeil. I wanted to show this as an example of what, how these drills, how these applications would look on a training day, a sample of what that training day may look like. This is they are training 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, um, with sort of recovery days in between the Tuesdays and Thursdays. Uh, he has a progression, so options for the progressions are levels 1, 2, or 3. Um, then a speed drill. Uh, and I like this note that the drills aren't done until the athlete can be in a proper position. He's doing an A march, an A skip, running A's, and butt kicks, 4 sets of 10. You know, build ups, 4 to 6 efforts at 20 yards, just moving, and then working an explosive strength, a specific strength, explosive med ball throws. Um, yeah, and then going to one of these strength circuits. Oh, um, and then on the recovery days, those tempo med ball tempos, he's got those. You know, I thought those were really important as well. You can't continue to overuse, create overuse injuries by repeating the same drills. So making sure that there's enough variation and making sure that there's time for athletes to recover from the intensity of the training that they're doing is important as well. Um, so yeah, I thought this was a good slide to, just show how you might plan to add your running to your training sessions. Um, let's see other things to kind of consider. Um, when working with absolute speed, you can also use wall drills for that as well. So posture drills, yeah, holding one hand towards the wall, posturing up, and going through your clawing action drills, cycling drills to help to place emphasis on where the foot strike should be for your athlete. Um, those are also good to remember. Key things to keep in mind for other ways to develop acceleration: hill runs, so running up an incline, um, are extremely useful ways to develop specific strength and capability for explosive starts. um, I would say one caveat with that to keep in mind is to make sure that you are taking good care of your athletes gastroc Achilles junction before going to a hill. Hill running is really aggressive and it's a potent stimulus. It's a wonderful one, but it's potent. So keep that in mind, and always have a good progression. Um, and I think that's also just a good point to kind of end on is the importance of like having thoughtful progressions when you're integrating sort of intense tools into your athlete's preparation. Is just having a plan, having an awareness of where they need to be and how you're going to get there, how much time you have, uh, and you know, trying to treat your athlete the best way, take the best care of them like you would for your own child. Um, and so that kind of goes into my last slide is, I'm a father. I have a young son, a 2-year-old son, and when he was born, the way I coached sort of evolved. Um, and I started seeing these athletes that I'm training, Davion and all those kids that you saw in those videos. I started looking at them a bit differently and imagining how much work it was for your parents to get you to this point. How much suffering do parents go through for their children, and so it made me a much more careful. It made me a much more careful coach. Where in the past, I was probably at certain times, not probably, certainly, uh, you know, maybe a bit more reckless. We did some very, very hard training. Uh, I've certainly put athletes through the ringer before, but uh, now I certainly have evolved quite a bit to understand how to do more with less. And I think that's always the true test is doing more with less and being able to, you know, sort of what they call it, look through the trees to find what you're looking for. Um, yeah. That kind of wraps up what I wanted to cover today. In terms of training, are there any questions so far? I'll tell you a little bit more about me. So this is me a year and 3 months ago to the left. I had a pretty bad accident. I had an aortic dissection. So it's what's called the widowmaker. Your aorta essentially just starts to rip from where it inserts it in your heart to your kidneys. And yeah, this was really bad. I needed open heart surgery, et cetera, and spent a good month or month and a half in the hospital. The picture of me on the right is, I think it was 8 months later. Yeah, and all I know is that God is real. God really saved me, and I want to encourage coaches to make sure that you are also okay. We spend our time taking care of our athletes. And, on the outside, everyone thought I was really healthy, but on the inside, I needed to go see a doctor, and I should have been, I could have been more diligent with that. Coaches, just make sure that you are also um, taking care of yourself and staying healthy so that you can be around and, help your athletes and, you know, yeah, be around because our time here is already limited enough, and our expertise isn't just um, can't just be found anywhere. The time that we spent working with our athletes, the knowledge that we have, um, and the ability that we have to adapt to scenarios, um, it can't be. And it just does. It's just not replicated. And so I want to encourage coaches to you know, take care of yourselves, get checked up. If something's not right, go to the hospital. And that's essentially what happened that morning. I was dressed like I was getting ready to go to work, and I said something doesn't feel right. I drove to the hospital, and 3 hours later, I had open heart surgery. So, yeah, thank God. And I want to again thank you all for listening, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Um, yeah, and I hope to do more in the future. And I hope this was useful. And if it wasn't, let me know and I can help to get you better information. But in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and very grateful for the information that you've shared, and of course, what you went through, and to see you here today presenting to us. I would just ask if there's anyone with a question that they need to clarify with you, they can speak up. Anyone with a question or anything that you'd like Mr. Emmanuel to repeat or to clarify? Everybody's quiet. Seems everybody's satisfied. Unless I'm wrong. Is there anyone who would like to get some clarification? Wow. So maybe for myself, could you
Yeah,
go back to the last slide?
sure.
Work capacity training cycle. Just want to find out, we are here, we are a group of coaches. We are not only from athletics, but I believe and understand that speed, power, and all that agility balance applies to all the sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you could just maybe go through it in a nutshell, just to, not addressing specifically athletics, but even other sports and how, yes,
Oh,
and
so this
how,
one?
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so the key things to keep in mind are the, you know, how much work are your athletes doing with, because so if you're working with another coach and then the other coach is in charge of the volume of work that's done for your athletes, then have you need to be aware of exactly what that volume is and what it's going to be. You need to be able to plan and know that. I think those are the key things in working with a team sport. In that team sport scenario, there's going to be more practitioners. And so there are going to be more ideas and there's going to be more there's just more things to manage, just more athletes. Um, so everything begins with that, understanding what the volume of work is done. And that volume can be any measure that is useful to you. So a really simple measure, like the simplest one, time on feet. How much time, not how many yards, how many meters, you know, how much time, you know, can be a measure. Um, it could be as simple as that. It could be as complicated as percentage of maximal heart rate. It could be a GPS monitor, a load. Um, how else would we look for? Yeah, time. Time is typically my favorite one. Uh, Although that can get complicated because, like I said, the 3 sets of 10 on a lunge that is only a second down and up is different than 3 sets of 10 on a lunge that's 5 seconds down and up. So the intensity of a training session, you know, isn't going to be measured in the time necessarily, and the intensity of specific drills as well. So as we get a bit more finite, we look within the sessions to look for those moments of, you know, uh, somebody called them fire. Donald Chu called it fire. I know Alvin Mill. Alvin Mill called it fire. He said your volume is fire. So I look for where's the most volume, where's the most density of training, um, and then I start to plan around that. If Yeah, that's where my mind goes to. So the specific sport, soccer, there are drills that are going to be really demanding, like a short-sided drill could be really intense. Imagine a lot of cutting, a lot of athletes staying flexed position. The legs are going to be getting taxed in a way that's different than uh, you know. Uh, jogging across the field and walking and then jogging back, right? That sort of thing. Those are the critical things to keep in mind. So having a map of the dosage of your practices is, I think, really really useful. um, and then knowing that if you are going to add a stimulus, that you need to pull something, pull away from something else. So um, if I want to, do more resisted starts, then I'm gonna probably do I don't know, few less sprints, or maybe a few less sets of squats, or maybe a lower intensity on the squat, for whatever it is that I'm going to apply to the athlete later on. I always think about having a good push and pull in terms of where you put the emphasis on their training. And I think the last note I would say about that, and I think the thing is really interesting as well as working with the team sports is having a good map for the capabilities of those different drills task, and then being able to organize that in your practice as well. So knowing where your high and your low periods are in a practice is also useful too, so that your athletes are within the training session, within the tactical training session, they're also getting a stimulus that is like physiologically like just more amenable to progress, if that makes sense. So like having good recoveries within the practice before they ramp up, or just having like a good warm up. So, before they start, sprinting towards the ball like full speed, that there's, periods of like elevated intensities before they get to that. And then when they get to that session, that it's, that it's clean and concise, and that it ends before the athletes start breaking down. So those same kind of like same tenets, same sort of principles, the practice has a good start, a middle, and a finish. Yeah. Yeah, I love that question, because that's really exciting, is, the application of sports to team settings, I think, with all the variations of different ways that can be applied for all different scenarios,
Yeah. Thank you for that. This gentleman, Sly.
This guy, Sly, is the guy. He is the guy. I can't wait to meet him. Yeah, super cool.
This gentleman called Sly. Steve, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Kindly try and mute this Sly.
Okay.
Oh, Steve, man, I really, man, your presentation was so good.
Okay.
I listened to your presentation yesterday.
I'll call him after this just to let him know. Should be
If
sensitive. If you are not able to,
Just a minute.
Yeah, darling.
I have one more question, or one thing that I need you to Steve is not able to. Coach Sly, paying attention. One more thing that I would want you also to talk about. You mentioned that during the time of building the capacity, workout capacity, you will check if one is able to use his body weight, squat, like,
Yeah.
and I know are not able to squat that much of weight. So is it a principle to determine how strong somebody is, readiness, or
Oh, I think I heard your question. You said, is there a protocol to determine if someone's ready for plyometrics?
Sure.
Yeah.
kindly elaborate?
Oh, yeah. I think that yeah, I mean, so there are some sort of standards, so like that ability there is one way, but it's kind of up to, in my mind, it's kind of up to I think, what is it? It could be like you can have a percentage of body weight, like able to squat your body weight, essentially, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That would probably be a good place to start. But I think that there are some specific, definitely Donald Chu, Albert Mule have some specific, and even Charlie Francis have some like specific numbers that are like, hey, you should be able to squat 1.5% body weight before doing these movements, Yeah, those certainly exist. Yeah, they certainly exist. But I also think that it's you can also determine, or you can make your own standards, because like if you don't have a rack and bar and barbells, like, does that mean that, because you can't demonstrate a 1.5% body weight squat? Like, well, no. So I think that perhaps the easiest thing to do is maybe just start with like evaluating the ability to just do a vertical jump and land with a good mechanic, with just your body weight, So I think that's a good way to start. And then I really I use this idea of progressing until technical failure. So you may have to change the drills or change parts of the drills to elicit the right response from the person. One that isn't going to result in their technique or posture breaking down, but one that's still going to put them in a position that is going to develop their strength. So, for example, a person does a vertical jump, but they land and they're not able to control their landing. Well, I know I need to work on their positioning for their landing. So I eliminate the jump and we just stand up on our toes and drop down, do drop downs until we learn how to bring our hips back and absorb power in a safer manner. And that becomes, our plyometric work. So I think maybe that might be the answer for the question as well, is that what's going to determine that is the athlete's ability to control the loads, and they just need to be able to demonstrate it. And so, you end up having sort of these checks and balances, so if an athlete can't do a vertical jump without landing and knees going valgus, then obviously they're not going to progress to hurdle jumps or multiple repeat jumps, but our plyometric session is going to be the session where we work on just absorbing, and then we're going to move on and develop all the rest of the other capabilities that they need. We're going to spend time focusing on lunge patterns and mobility and, basic body weight control until they're able to demonstrate like landing without knees going valgus. It's running with chain or running with a tire, like an empty tire. So puncturing a hole about midway through the tire, tying a rope through it, tying the rope to a belt, and presto, bingo, bango, you have a $1,200 hack for how to improve some run mechanics. The tire can just drag on the ground. And again, it doesn't, you can be on a dirt road, gravel road, whatever, grass, even better, yeah. And so those are my favorite hacks for how to add resistance to acceleration mechanics.
All right. Thank you so much. Is there anyone with a question or any clarification before we can bring this to an end? If there's none, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your time and insightful presentation. Really appreciate all that the information that you've shared with us. And of course, you're looking forward to having another session like this.
Yeah, certainly.
Even invite some of your colleagues whom you think can also give us or share with us, their knowledge and experience in sports coaching.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And just anyone that, if I can help with anything, please let me know.
Thank you so much. And again, very, sorry and encouraged, just see you come out of such a situation and being back on your feet, to work with others, like us across here. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge on this.
For sure. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
So
Appreciate all your work. Yeah.
So if you have anything to say to the coaches, please do, and then we can bring this to an end.
Aluta continua.